Look at you now. Master of the Bronze Age, tools gleaming, adorned with weapons, storage and backpacks alike overflowing with riches. But what's this you see? A sprawling set of tasks, ready to overwhelm you once again. Chemicals, circuits, batteries, and so many machines. What to do first? Where to go next? Have you found everything you need? Fear not, I've got your back. Welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Gregtech New Horizons. After this, you'll be ready for Stargate. Or at least to tackle the rest of the pack on your own. We cross the chasm today. This is episode 4, LV. So about that quest overload. Before you dive in, revisit the end of episode 3. If you aren't absolutely loaded with resources, you aren't getting far. Steel, copper, redstone, tin, iron, and rubber. Lots and lots of it. Try the slime trees for extra. You don't need to pre-make the plates and things. You're about to get a better way. But having mass quantities of ingots is a good idea, or you're going to run into roadblocks quickly. Start with that you're going to hate this quest, and be reassured that if you're well prepared, you won't hate it at all. After that, the bending machine, wire mill, extruder, and polarizer are priority 1, in that order. The resource savings begin here. Plates, wires, rods, and magnetization just became cheaper. Try to only make enough plates for the bending machine so you can make cheaper plates, enough wire for the wire mill for cheaper wire, rods for the extruder for cheaper rods, and magnetized rods for the polarizer. After you have those machines, make giant batches of everything. Efficiency achieved. The cutting machine and assembler are priority number 2. To get the aluminum dust for the cobalt brass, just run aluminum gravel through the ingot mold in the smeltery, then macerate the raw aluminum. Everything else you can make as it comes up during your questing, meaning also right now. And for the moment, your workshop is largely complete. By now you might have figured out that the power cables work a lot like pipes, except you use the wire cutter to connect them. Here's some other things to know. Every wire carries both volts of EU, or power, and amps, or iterations of that power. The tooltip tells you how many amps and how much EU a wire can carry. A 1x10 cable carries 32 EU, at 1 amp, or 1 iteration of 32 EU. A 4x10 cable carries 32 U, at 4 amps, or 4 iterations of 32 EU. What this means is that a 1x10 cable can supply one machine that requires 32 EU per tick, because the cable can carry 1 iteration of 32 EU. A 4x10 cable can supply 4 machines that require 32 EU, because the cable can carry 4 iterations of 32 EU. If you try to run more machines than you have amps available on the wire, some of the machines won't get power. If you're powering an LV wire line with 4 generators, each producing 32 EU, the wire needs to carry 4 amps of LV and can power 4 machines. There's also amperage math, which is even easier. 4 amps of LV is 1 amp of MV. 4 amps of MV is 1 amp of HV, and so on, all the way up. Later, when you're transforming between your power tiers, this will matter more. For now, pretty simple, right? It's also possible to run a denser cable in a line and branch off of it as well, as long as the total number of machines on a given branch don't exceed the amperage of the branch wire, and the total number of machines on the whole line don't exceed the amperage of the densest cable. Basic rules of thumb to always follow. Only plug machines into wire of the same tier, only plug wire into power producers of the same tier, and don't break those 2 rules ever. You also have the choice to either move steam or move power. I personally opted for moving steam, since no potential energy is lost as you move it. Moving long distances with cable results in a small amount of loss that gets larger the farther you go. At LV, the starter cable loses 1 EU for every block it travels, so traveling more than a handful of blocks can be a bad time. With your first machines wired up and the cutting machine online, you can upgrade everything to diamond. Armor, chests, the dolly, and diamond spikes. You can even make the Electrotine jetpack to help you get vertical for longer hang gliding sessions. You might have noticed blazes are particularly nasty. That's because they always spawn infernal, or with special mob abilities, which means they drop super good loot, including full durability chainmail, gold, and iron armor. You just made diamond armor, so you don't need these for protection, but you can break them down for metal, including steel. Welcome to your first passive resource generation, a mob farm. There's a note in the tips and tricks section about obtaining ender pearls using the smeltery, so buy some enderman spawn eggs from the quest book and melt them down. A vacuum hopper will grab all the mob loot and put it in a chest, or into a pipe system that filters everything into drawers. It'll be good practice with the item pipes before what comes next. At this point, you can also make the portal to the Twilight Forest. which you should do immediately, and start prospecting right away. There are a bunch of cool bosses in the Twilight for later. For now, you're after bulk supplies of silver, lead, and nickel. The steam upgrades you've been waiting for hours on are finally here. Get those 40 high-pressure solar boilers. And don't worry about saving silver. There's plenty to be had. You might want to hold on to Galena, though, for much, much later. So you want to automate machines, do ya? I don't blame you. So many things are possible now, from building blocks to component automation. First of all, don't be shy about making multiple copies of the same machine. It's a feeling you'll need to get used to. Secondly, the machines themselves have some cool capabilities and modifiers to help you. You can right-click a machine with a wrench, using the same directional rules as the pipes and wires, and set the default output side. Then, using the buttons in a machine, you can tell it to auto-output items or fluids, but it can't do both. There's also the circuit configuration to allow different recipes in the same machine. Click to increase, shift-click to open the GUI, shift right-click to clear. If you right-click the output side with a screwdriver, the machine can accept input items from the output side. Not something you need right now, but definitely remember that for later. Aside from auto output, there's also covers. Conveyors automate item I/O, pumps automate fluid I/O, and robot arms are basically highly configurable conveyors. For everything but the most complex automation, conveyors and pumps will do everything you need. There are some configuration options for them, the most important of which is behavior control. Does it pull items into the machine or push them out? There's also this button, Allow Input, which means if this conveyor is exporting, another conveyor on the other side can also export into the same side of the machine that this conveyor is on. This is a trick you'll want to learn. There are also lots of other useful covers. The overflow valve and conveyor cycling are going to be extremely useful. You'll see why very shortly. Before that, you came back from the Twilight with some lead. Let's put it to use. If you've been frustrated by power transfer, you can save yourself some headache with batteries. Not only can you buffer your power line like you would steam, but you can reset your amp count in a distributed network and push out more amps to a run a cable than you're sending into the battery buffer. Very handy. Hopefully you saved all the lepidolite and spodumene from those salt veins you mine for better food, because you need it now. This is one of the first of many times an ore that you had tucked away in a chest will suddenly become relevant. You have multiple options for batteries, but lithium is best. If you're stuck, sodium and cadmium batteries work just fine. They just hold less power and come from different sources. Speaking of sources, this is a good time to look at that ore processing tree. When you're looking for how to get a resource, you'll always see this as the first tab if it has its own ore. Couple of problems for you, lowly LVH newbie. You don't have access to lithium ore. So how do you get the lithium? In this case, the quest book tells you. From ore washing lepidolite or centrifuging spodumene. But in the future, be prepared to look around for a way to get the thing you want that you actually have access to. And mind the recipe tier. Last thing before LV automations, there's just one more thing you need to do. Find mica. The EBF is coming, and you need mica for the coils. If you saved a cassiterite ore, stick it in the ore finder wand and go exploring. You might have to roam a bit to find it. There is an alternative for the starting coils if you really just can't find any, but it's more annoying than finding a mica vein and being set on mica foils until IV or later. Trust me. Unless you're just itching to build and need blocks, hydrogen should be your first foray into multi-step automation. We're going to use a couple of tricks here, and you'll need to reuse these same tricks many times. You see, one of the quirks of single blocks is that they only have one spot for fluids. For recipes that require multiple fluids, the others will have to be in cells. Which means to automate chemical processes, you'll need to empty the cells, store the fluid, and send the cells back. Using the conveyor import-export trick from earlier, and another trick called cell cycling, and the overflow valve we talked about to keep the tanks from filling with an output you're using less of, you can automate hydrogen and oxygen. You're either going to get cells of oxygen or cells of hydrogen, so put a tank beside the machine and use fluid auto output to send whichever fluid you get into it. Then put another tank on top of the machine, a conveyor on top of the machine, and another one on the bottom of the tank, and set both to allow input. When the cells of oxygen or hydrogen are made, they get ejected into the tank, get emptied, and get sent back into the input side of the machine to run the recipe again. LV conveyors are slow, but so are LV machines, so plug water into the electrolyzer and let it rip. Set the overflow valves to 1 millibucket less than the capacity of the tank, and any overflow will get voided so the machines don't stop. You're likely to use the hydrogen and oxygen at different rates, so this is highly advised, although using some extra tanks to store surplus might also be a good idea. If you didn't scale your steam production, you're going to have trouble running the electric blast furnace you're about to make even close to full time. Luckily, there's an answer: black gold. But let's just say it takes some effort. Make an LV pump and a stack of mining pipe, then head to the nearest oil spout. Place the pump above the middle block of the spout, cover it, power it, set the export direction, and place a tank. This will be your chore for the foreseeable future. You also have the option of using long-distance fluid pipes, which the quest book explains how to use. These spouts go quick, and moving the long-distance pipe takes effort too, so it might be 6 one way and half dozen the other. It's your call. Once you have the oil, the quest wants you to do a few things with it. This is mostly to demonstrate that you can do a few things with it, and later, more than a few things. Regardless of if you use it for power, oil distillation is a solid way to get the MV tier chemicals. These quests aren't required, but worth it. And if you've got it, might as well burn it. Everything that isn't transformed for questing can be turned into light fuel. Automating that process, as you might guess, is worth it. And good practice with cell looping. You'll need every last drop coming up very soon. Your first electric multi-block. What a day. The electric blast furnace, better known as the EBF, is the first true milestone of the pack in my opinion. Once you have it and can power it, the world of GTNH is open to you. Most of the mods that you haven't used yet are gated behind the EBF in one way or another, unless you got lucky with loot. Before you make it, finish tooling up if you haven't. Electric multi-blocks require maintenance before they can run, and randomly after you turn them on. Make the toolbox and stick your tools in it. The ones you need for maintenance are the hammer, the wrench, the soft mallet, the crowbar, the screwdriver, and the soldering iron. You also need some fine soldering alloy wire. If you haven't made any antimony, now's the time. Another chance to use the NEI exploration lessons to find out how to get it. It's step 9. The blast furnace parts themselves should be easy enough to get at this point. You've been preparing all day after all. Copper and nickel from Cooper Nickel, combined with mica and liquid tin, courtesy of the fluid extractor you no doubt already made, and you have your coils. The only other thing you haven't seen before are the maintenance hatch, the muffler hatch, and the energy hatch. The maintenance hatch, you simply right-click with your filled toolbox to perform maintenance, or with duct tape if you're in a pinch. The muffler hatch is like the exhaust, but not every multi-block needs one. And the energy hatch is where you plug in power. You may notice that the quest asks for 2 energy hatches. Most Gregtech multi-blocks can use 2 energy hatches and up-tier their power level. Each energy hatch accepts 2 amps at its tier of power, so 2 energy hatches, 2 amps apiece, that's 4 amps of LV, or 1 amp of MV. Remember the math. And make sure the generators are as close as possible to the EBF. The cable power loss can hose you. Since you can't make the MV energy hatch yet, this is the only way to give a multi-block MV power, which you'll need to smelt aluminum. The lubricant for the energy hatches can be made with the creosote you've been hoarding, so that should be easy. But what might not be easy is keeping this thing running. Keep scaling steam, increase your buffers of steam or power, or invest in light fuel production. Any way you slice it, you might not be able to run it full time. Don't fret, this is likely to keep happening, just like you'll need to keep doubling up on energy hatches to tier up. Every time you do it, you'll be putting your power production under strain. It's called up-tiering for a reason. And with the blast furnace operational, you can now make gallium arsenide crystals. Yet another opportunity to get familiar with exploring NEI for source materials. But this is a guide after all. So electrolyze sphalerite for gallium and centrifuge railgar for arsenic, both found in the nether. If you have to go back or haven't gotten any yet, grab all the different types of quartz while you're there too. Railgar is a small ore, so don't go looking for it specifically. Hopefully you've been keeping what you've randomly found while mining other things. Batchcraft giant quantities of molten glass. Giant quantities. And otherwise, prepare to reap the rewards of your preparation. If that stack of LV circuits you started the tier with hasn't lasted until now, make another 10 or so. You need 6 for the MV circuit quest, and having a few to spare just in case you need to quickly solve a power problem is a good idea. And don't worry, these are the only 2 MV circuits you have to craft in this outrageously expensive way. Use them both on the circuit assembler. You've done it. You've completed the first of many circuit production upgrade loops. There's just one more thing you need to advance to MV. Aluminum. You may have even already made some. Hopefully you at least have some aluminum gravel left, and remember how to get raw aluminum. Keep it raw this time. You can't EBF the dust until later. If you're out, go get some, or go back to the Twilight for cryolite and mix it with the alumina you have left over from getting the gallium arsenide crystals. Or smelt all the crap jewels you brought back from your first trip with some carbon to get it. One way or another, it's time to advance once again. The world has become your oyster. Now that you have aluminum, the mod pack really opens up to you. The quest book immediately points you to Thaumcraft, for example, which leads to all sorts of other magic. Basically any power system you want to start gearing up for is waiting for you to begin in MV. Ender IO and its many conveniences are right around the corner. The Copter Pack, the true gateway to the stars, is right on your doorstep. But there are a few things you may want to do first. Everything the quest book points you to in LV is worth a look. It's trying to prepare you for this repeated pattern you'll experience going forward. Every big step forward unlocks a dozen small steps you can take, so the next big one is easier. Here's some highlights you'll want to grab. The magnet, electric wrench, arc furnace for steel production, electric tree tab if you don't have stick reed, transfer nodes, chandelier, void filter, golden lasso, biome compass, carbon crossbow limb, Damascus steel for tools, and steel cells. Very nice. There's also the LV miner. Take it if you want, but you might be better off waiting until you have a plan for portable fuel, especially if you rode it out with steam and didn't go for light fuel. That's it. You now know everything you need to know to take the next steps in the pack. The automation tricks, the tools, the rules about wire and pipes, even the diamond chests. Everything will stay relevant until you get back from the moon and well beyond. Unless you know some tricks of your own, of course. Even if you don't, you're ready for this. Get in the game and have some fun. And hey, stay positive out there.